Well, it is great to see everyone this morning. You know, every marriage, every relationship is different. Different people, different personalities, different dynamics. But in every marriage, it can be pretty well guaranteed that conflicts will arise. And it doesn't really matter how compatible a couple seems to be, how in love they are. Eventually, conflicts will come up. And they could come up from any direction in any topic. And they could arise from either the man or the woman or both, or maybe they just kind of show up and no one knows how it got started. Conflicts arise. But what's important isn't the fact that conflicts will arise. What's important is how we overcome these conflicts. You know, when those conflicts arise, do you allow them to drive a wedge in your relationship, to drive you apart and cause problems? Or do you use them as opportunities to come together, work together, and be stronger on the other side? You see, we know that the Bible teaches how to resolve conflicts in marriage. We're all aware of that. We've read our Bibles. We're aware of the Bible. The Bible teaches these things. But the hard part is actually doing it, right? You can know that the Bible teaches conflict resolution, but doing it is harder. So are you actually willing to do what it teaches to overcome those conflicts? Or in the moment, in the heat of the moment, do you throw all the Bible's wisdoms out and just act on your emotion? Today, we're finishing up our sermon series on the joy of marriage from Song of Solomon. I've enjoyed these sermons on the Song of Solomon, and today we're wrapping up that series by talking about the joy of overcoming marital struggles. Now, of course, just like any trial in life, the struggle itself is not the joyful part. Going through a struggle with your spouse is not fun. But the joy is being stronger on the other side. If you overcome those struggles in a godly fashion, then your marriage can be even more joyful because you've grown together. So what we're going to do today is we're going to examine Song of Solomon, chapters 5 and 6. And I know there are a lot of different interpretations of this section. This section is not crystal clear. So we're going to look at it from the direction of conflict resolution. We're going to look first at the overall story of this section. We're then going to talk about some lessons from the story. And finally, we're going to wrap up by talking about some lessons about conflict resolution from elsewhere in Scripture. Now, if you have some other pet theory or interpretation on this section, that's great. I don't have any problem with that because the ambiguity of Song of Solomon, there are a number of different interpretations people take. But we're going to look at it from the direction of conflict resolution. So let's go and let's look at an overview of the story. Now, you know, I don't really like talking about things in the Bible as stories because the Bible is full of accounts, historical accounts, the things that happened. But this section, I don't mind calling a story. One, because it's poetic, and two, it's a dream sequence, and three, it's not really crystal clear if this is exactly the way things happened or if this is a poetic retelling of the emotional state. So, with that being said, this is probably another dream sequence. We see that in chapter 5, verse 2, where she says, "I was asleep, but my heart was awake." So, there's a good chance this section is a dream sequence, and we're not really sure where the dream sequence ends. So bear that in mind as we talk about some of these figures. So we have the conflict. Chapter 5, starting in verse 2, "I was asleep, but my heart was awake." This is the wife speaking. "A voice, my beloved, was knocking. 'Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is drenched with dew, my locks with the damp of night.' She responds by saying, 'I have taken off my dress. How can I put it on again? I have washed my feet. How can I dirty them again?'" So it appears as if he comes to her late wanting intimacy. The fact that he says that his hair is wet with the dew of the night means that he probably was out past midnight. in the Middle East, in that area, the dew would settle after midnight. So he's out pretty late outdoors to get wet from the dew. And he comes and looks like he's knocking on her door, or he's trying to wake her up, showering praise on her, wanting intimacy. But she's already in bed, possibly upset, and rebuffs him. She says, I've already taken off my dress. How can I put it on again? I've already washed my feet. How can I dirty them again? Now, the washing the feet thing, our culture, we may not necessarily get that reference, but they walked around in sandals in the sand all day. They would wash their feet before they got into bed so they didn't get sand and stuff in their sleeping area. So she's already in bed. She can't get up again, she says. And he's persistent. We read, verse 4, my beloved extended his hand through the opening, and my feelings were aroused for him. I arose to open to my beloved, and my hands dripped with myrrh, and my fingers with liquid myrrh on the handles of the bolts. I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had turned away and had gone. My heart went out to him as he spoke. I searched for him, but I did not find him. I called to him, but he did not answer. So even though she rebuffs him at first, she changes her mind. Now, he's either at her door, the door is locked, and he's trying to reach through the lattice to unlock it, or he's snuggling with her, trying to arouse her, and she finally changes her mind. But he's left. He's already gone, and he's possibly upset. Now, maybe he left entirely. Maybe he rolled over and gave her the cold shoulder, as it were, emotionally left. Either way, he's left. He's possibly upset. And so she searches for him, verses 6 through 8. I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had turned away and had gone. My heart went out to him as he spoke. I searched for him, but I did not find him. I called him, but he did not answer me. The watchmen who make the rounds in the city found me. They struck me and wounded me. The guardsmen of the wall took away my shawl from me. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, as to what you will tell him, for I am lovesick. Okay, I reiterate, this is probably a dream sequence. She's probably not literally doing these things, but she's going through a dream in this. So she searches the palace and calls for him, but can't find him. He's gone, as it were. And so she expands her search to the city, but the watchmen mistreat her. Now, we're going to talk more about the watchmen in a minute, because that particular verse, it can be confusing depending on how you take this section. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then she pleads with the women of the city to help her search. So she searches the palace, she searches the city, then she asks for help from the women of the city. Now, in verses 9 through 16, she recounts why she loves him. The women, they ask her to describe her beloved. Verse 9, what kind of beloved is your beloved, O most beautiful among women? What kind of beloved is your beloved that you thus adjure us? So they say, okay, describe him to us so we can help you find him. And she recounts his good qualities. She says, my beloved is dazzling and ruddy, outstanding among 10,000. His head is like gold, pure gold. His locks are clusters of dates and black as raven. His eyes are like doves beside streams of water, bathed in milk and reposed in their settings. His cheeks are like a bed of balsam, banks of sweet-scented herbs. His lips are lilies dripping with liquid myrrh. His hands are rods of gold set with beryl. His abdomen is carved ivory inlaid with sapphires. His legs are pillars of alabaster set on pedestals of pure gold. His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as the cedars. His mouth is full of sweetness, and he is wholly desirable. This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. Now that's really important. She goes and she recounts his good qualities to the women of the city. And then, chapter 6, verses 1 through 3, she finds him. Again, the women ask her where he might go. Where has your beloved gone, O most beautiful among women? Where has your beloved turned that we may seek him with you? And so now, rather than acting on emotion, she's thinking things through. She's paying attention. So she says, my beloved has gone down to his garden, to the bed of balsam, to pasture his flocks in the gardens and gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine, he who pastures his flocks among the lilies. So she remembers where he goes to find peace. When he's upset, when he wants peace, he goes down to his garden. And so then she goes to where he is to make up. And we see this because the very next verse, he's talking to her. So obviously she went and found him in his garden where he's spending time. And then immediately he shows her appreciation. And this is possibly them making up. He says, "You are beautiful. You are as beautiful as tears of my darling, as lovely as Jerusalem, as awesome as an army with banners. Turn your eyes away from me, for they have confused me. Your hair is like a flock of goats that have descended from Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of ewes which have come up from their washing, all of which bear twins, and not one among them has lost her young. Your temples are like a slice of pomegranate behind your veil." So he reaffirms his admiration for her. He doesn't hold a grudge. He doesn't get all grumpy at her. He reaffirms that he loves her. He also, though, expresses that she confuses him. And this happens a couple times in Song of Solomon, where he talks about how her eyes confuse him or entice him. And honestly, verse 5 is one of my favorite verses in the book. "Turn your eyes away from me, for they have confused me." Any husband knows that sometimes his wife confuses him. Sometimes there may be a situation where at one moment she's really happy with you, and the next moment she's not happy with you, or the other way around. And they give you these looks that are ambiguous that catch your eye and you're interested, but I don't know what that means. You're confusing me. And I love that. Even Solomon was confused by his wife's expressions sometimes. And he explains where he's been. Let's look forward at verse 11. "I went down to the orchard of nut trees to see the blossoms of the valley, to see whether the vine had budded or the pomegranates had bloomed. Before I was aware, my soul set me over the chariots of my noble people." Now, whether he's recounting why he came home late, that he had been inspecting crops and then got carried away with the business of looking over his people, or whether he's saying that when he left because of their disagreement, he went and did these things. Either way, he's explaining where he's been. Now, there's a lot in that, and we're not going to cover all of the little figures of speech here. But let's talk about some lessons from this story, because there are some great lessons for conflict resolution from this section. Going back to the beginning, chapter 5, verse 2 and following, let's talk some about preventative measures. This whole situation, if we're looking at it right, could have been avoided. See, a husband must be conscious of actions that upset his wife. We don't know the whole story here. One way or the other, Solomon upset his wife. Guys, we need to be conscious of actions that upset our wives. You learn this through experience, what they like, what they don't like, what they appreciate, what they don't appreciate, and avoid the things that they don't appreciate. Pay attention to their emotions, pay attention to their preferences, and don't do things that are going to upset them. On the other side, though, the wife must understand the needs of her husband. If he was off with business of state, or reviewing troops and doing things that are necessary for a king, well, he needs to do those things. So sometimes a wife needs to understand the needs of her husband, of his job, of the situation that he may be in. You see, there needs to be understanding on both sides. Neither side jumping to conclusions, neither side being callous, but both husband and wife considering each other's needs and being conscientious of what's going on in the other's life. But the conflict happened one way or the other. Oh, forgot to mention this. See, an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. I love this old saying. I don't know where this saying originated. I've heard it from a few different places, but the idea is a little bit of prevention on an ongoing basis prevents problems from coming up. And it's better to have that little bit of prevention ongoing than to try to solve things. And this is true in any part of our life, in your health, with your vehicles, in your marriage. An ounce of prevention is worth far more than a pound of cure. So the conflict happened. Let's talk about seeking a resolution. So remember, she got up and she started looking for him. In a healthy marriage, either the husband or the wife can make the first move toward problem solving. Either one. There's nothing that says it always has to be the husband or it always has to be the wife. Either party in the marriage can make that first step towards resolution. And I might go as far as to say that each of them should, in their own turn, make that first step. If it gets to a point in a relationship where only one of them ever seeks resolution, well, that's not really a healthy marriage. And in a very healthy marriage, hopefully both of them are going to be seeking resolution together, and one of them is not trying to be resistant to it. But also persistence may be necessary to solve the problem. She searched the palace, she searched the city, she asked for help before she finally got to him and they made resolution. So persistence may be necessary. Sometimes feelings get really hurt. I wish it weren't so, but sometimes it happens. And you may go and try to make resolution. You may try to make up with your spouse, and they're still feeling hurt. They're still resistant to it. And so you may have to show persistence. And it may take a while, especially if those hurt feelings have built up over a long time and they run deep. Persistence will be necessary, but it is worth it. Now let's talk about these guards. Of everything in this section, this is probably the most confusing. Because if we were to take this absolutely literally, that she went out into the city and the guards literally struck her, that raises a lot of questions about the guards in Jerusalem. Why are they striking random women in the streets? Don't they know this is the queen? If so, why are they striking the queen? There's a lot of big questions if this were literal. But if we take this as a dream sequence, the guards could represent her own emotions. She's beating herself up. Now, we've all been there, where there's a conflict with our spouse. And maybe you realize that you're the one in the wrong. Maybe they were the one in the wrong, but you responded harshly and said something you ought not to have said, and you beat yourself up. You're kind of browbeating yourself of, I messed this up. We've been there. And if you haven't been there, well, you probably will be eventually. The thing about it, though, is a person's hurt feelings can drive them to seek resolution or to build resentment. You can choose what you allow those hurt feelings to do. You're browbeating yourself. You feel hurt. Well, are you going to use that to drive you to make it up with your spouse, to make it better, to fix the problem? Or are you going to use that to harden your heart and just make you angry? I want to use the analogy of a rock in your shoe. You ever had a rock in your shoe and it's just, it bothers you and it hurts. You don't stand there and grind it in to show that rock who's boss. That only hurts you, right? What do? You take the shoe off, you find the rock, you get rid of it, you put a Band-Aid on the foot, and then maybe you limp for a little while. Use that hurt feelings, use that emotion to drive you to fix the problem. To go to your spouse and say, I don't like the way this feels. I don't like having this division. I don't like that we're at odds. What can we do to fix it? And work together for it. Use those feelings to drive you to seek resolution rather than driving you to build up resentment. Resentment never solves anything. Now let's talk about the women of the city. So she goes and she asks the women of the city to help her find her beloved. And they ask her, what is he like? And then where would he go? Sometimes you need to seek help overcoming conflict. There may come time where you try to fix the conflict and it doesn't work. You can't find resolution. Well, you might need to bring in some help. You might need to seek someone who is wiser than yourself to help you through the situation. However, wise advisors can set you on the road to resolution, but a foolish one can push you toward division. So choose your advisors carefully. And this is going to sound really harsh, but I mean it. Don't go to someone who's been married and divorced and married and divorced and married and divorced and married and divorced, and their current marriage is on the rocks and is horrible. Don't go to that person for advice. If they come to you with advice, smile and nod, but don't take it. Go to someone who has a long-standing, healthy marriage, who's been married for decades, and they have a loving, strong, godly marriage. Go to that person for advice. Go to someone who's healthy for advice. Choose your advisors carefully. Let's talk now about verse 16. Verse 16 is really neat. Verse 16, she says, his mouth is full of sweetness, and he's wholly desirable. This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. She describes him not just as her beloved, but as her friend. You see, friendship implies loyalty, trust, and closeness. There's that loyalty that goes beyond simply, well, we have to be together, but we want to be together. Friendship implies trust. It implies that emotional closeness. And friendship in marriage is so very essential because when infatuation fades, a marriage between close friends will endure. You know, when you're young and you're first married, you may think the infatuation's never going to end, right? You're in that honeymoon phase, and the whole rest of our life is going to be all sunshine and rainbows. But then life hits, whether it be 3 years in or they call it the 7-year itch or whatever other phrase you want to put on it. But eventually that infatuation fades. And when the infatuation is gone, if you don't have a friendship with your spouse, then suddenly you have that situation where there's two strangers living in the same house and they don't necessarily like each other. So build a friendship with your spouse so that when that infatuation fades, you're still there with your best friend and you get to spend all the time you want with your best friend. You see, when conflict arises, remind yourself of your friendship with your spouse. Don't see them as the enemy. This is something that makes resolution really hard. If we see our spouse as the opponent, I need to win. I need to be the winner. I need to, whatever. That's not a healthy way to see it. We're not at odds with our spouse. We're not our spouse's opponent. They're not the enemy. They're our best friend. And we will need to remind ourselves of that friendship. So we seek resolution and not battle. It shouldn't be a battle with your spouse. And that brings us to this idea of focusing on the positive. In chapter 5, verses 11 through 16, she recounts his good qualities. And in chapter 6, verses 4 through 9, he recounts what he appreciates about her. They focus on the positive. Remind yourself and others of the good characteristics of your spouse. It can be hard sometimes. When you've been at odds, when there's been that disagreement, and maybe you're annoyed, right? Maybe that your spouse has done things that annoy you, that bother you, that you're kind of grumpy about. Well, don't spend your time mulling over all the negative, all the problems, all the things you don't like, because when you come together, then you're going to be focusing on the negative. Remind yourself of all the reasons you married your spouse, all the things you appreciate about them, all their good qualities. But if you only focus on the negative, then you will not truly seek healing. You see this in marriage counseling when people, they just want to air all the grievances, but they don't want to talk about the quality. They're only focused on the negative. Well, they're not seeking resolution. They're seeking someone to tell them that they're right and their spouse is wrong. But it shouldn't be about I'm right, you're wrong. It should be about let's fix this together. And that brings us to Solomon's statements in verses 4 through 9, where he's repeating honest expressions of love. He honestly repeats many of the same things that he's used already. Let's look at this. Verse 4, you are beautiful as tears of my darling, as lovely as Jerusalem, as awesome as an army with banners. He said that already. Your teeth are like a flock of ewes, which have come up in their washings, all of which bear twins, and not one among them has lost her young. He said that previously. Your temples are like a slice of pomegranate behind your veil. He said that previously. He's recounting the same things. He's not coming up with new statements about her. He's repeating the same things. And honestly, that makes sense. When there's been a conflict with your spouse, you may not be at your most creative. You may not be coming up with new things to compliment them on. But as long as the expressions of love are genuine and true, your loved one will always enjoy hearing loving compliments. Now, you may be asking, what does this have to do with conflict resolution? Well, it's hard to stay mad at somebody who tells you that you're the most important person in the world and they think that you have all these great qualities. It's really hard to stay mad at that person. It's also hard to be mad at somebody when you're telling them how much you appreciate about them. You ever try that? Like, guys, your wife has done something that annoys you, but tell her how much you appreciate about her before you talk about the things that bother you. Pretty soon, what was I bothered about again? And you hardly even remember it because you're thinking about the good things about her. Show that love, even in the tough times. See, looking at this section as a whole, chapters 5 and 6, we can see that healthy couples, well, they recognize that they'll have different needs at different times. The man and the woman's needs will be different. They're going to need to compromise. They're going to need to take care of each other's needs. And so healthy couples are willing to yield to the other's needs and desires. And this isn't a one-way street. This isn't one of them always giving and the other one always receiving. But both parties in the marriage should be willing to sacrifice, to yield to the others, to serve each other's needs. And along with this, healthy couples are proactive about solving conflict. Healthy couples, strong couples, aren't going to just ignore it and hope it goes away. They're going to address it. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard, but they're going to address it and work through it so they can be stronger on the other side. And healthy couples are willing to sacrifice for the greater good of their marriage. If there's a conflict, there's some sort of friction, and something's going to have to give. Someone is going to have to make some changes, whether it's changes in habits, changes in treatment, changes in schedule. Resolving conflict requires change. And so healthy couples are willing to sacrifice for the greater good of their marriage. Maybe one of them needs to have less hours at work, which means that there's going to be less money in the bank account, but they need more time together. Maybe one of them is going to have to sacrifice the time with their friends so they can spend time with each other. Maybe they're going to have to rearrange their schedules so that they're not awake and asleep at opposite times because of work schedules. Whatever it may be, sacrifices may be necessary, and healthy couples are willing to sacrifice for the greater good of their marriage. See, all couples have problems. All couples do. And I want to assure you, even the couples that look like they're perfect, that on the surface don't seem to have any issues, they have problems. Or maybe they have had problems and they worked through them and now they're stronger because of it. All couples have problems, but strong couples seek resolution. And that's really the difference. Weak couples allow those problems to divide them and tear them apart. But strong couples seek resolution, they work through it together, and they're stronger on the other side. Now, Song of Solomon here showed us a lot of really good lessons about conflict resolution. But there's a few others that I think are important for us to talk about that Song of Solomon alludes to, but doesn't come out and directly state. So we're going to look at some conflict resolution tools from elsewhere in Scripture. Turn with me to Proverbs 15. Proverbs 15, starting in verse 1, and we read, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." You know, the thing about harsh words is sometimes they're emotionally satisfying. You ever been upset and you just, you want to say something harsh? And when you do, for a moment, it feels good. But then you see that you hurt the other person. Or maybe now they're rising to that level, right? And they're like, we're going to do this. And pretty soon there's a yelling match. Well, that's not helpful. That harsh word didn't help anything, did it? But a gentle answer turns away wrath. Now, a gentle answer isn't natural. When there's a conflict, when you're upset, or maybe your spouse is upset at you, maybe they've spoken harshly to you, it's not natural. Calm voice. To pause for a minute and think through your action and respond calmly and rationally. That's not natural. It's a skill that you have to build, but it's a skill worth building. Because this passage is absolutely true. A gentle answer turns away wrath. No matter how upset your spouse is, if you can manage to keep a gentle tone. Take that deep breath. Close your eyes. Let your heart rate lower a minute. And then answer calmly. Give a gentle answer. That will help you to find resolution rather than escalating the argument. Verse 2, Proverbs 15, verse 2. The tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable, but the mouth of fools spouts folly. The thing about being angry and letting your emotions rule you is you end up saying things that you don't necessarily mean and that don't necessarily make sense and are not necessarily wise. Anger makes us fools. And so if you let that anger, that grumpiness take over, you're probably going to spout folly. Probably going to say something that you don't mean or intend. But the tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable. Now, that is just such a fascinating statement. The tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable. You know, it's entirely possible to say something that's wise and knowledgeable, but say it in the wrong way and rile things up and cause a problem. So it's not just, hey, I have a good solution. It's giving it in a way that it is acceptable to the other person, which means you're going to have to think it through. I think I know what the solution is. I think I know the answer. But if I just come out and say, this is the answer, it may not work. How can I say it in such a way that my spouse will see the wisdom in this statement? Now you're no longer reacting. You're no longer just acting based on stimuli. You're thinking. You're planning. You're acting instead of reacting. Proverbs 15:4. A soothing tongue is a tree of life, but perversion in it crushes the spirit. You know, going back to that statement of how when you're upset, being harsh feels good. Well, when you're harsh, you may end up crushing your spouse, hurting them, crushing their heart. This is your beloved. This is the one that you have pledged your life to be with. But if you let your anger rule you, you might crush them, causing them emotional pain that will take a long time to solve, to fix. And so a soothing tongue is a tree of life. That tongue that gives soothing words, that speaks in a way that heals rather than burns. That tongue that is intentional. And you see what Solomon and his bride did. They didn't say, well, listen to all my grievances. They soothed with their words. Now, Paul gives basically the same instructions as we saw there in Proverbs, but words them in a different way. Let's go to Ephesians 4. Ephesians 4, 29 through 30. And this applies to any situation, not just to marriage. But Ephesians 4, starting in 29, says, let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification according to the need of the moment, so that it will give grace to those who hear. Do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. So right there, let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth. Nothing that is cutting or biting or mean or perverse. No unwholesome word. But only such as is good for edification according to the need of the moment. So you're thinking through what's going to be best in this situation. But that phrase, so we'll give grace to those who hear. You know, you may be riled up at your spouse. You may feel like they were really foolish, really heartless, and you might feel like they deserve a tongue lashing. Well, giving grace is not about giving what someone deserves. It's about giving them that unmerited, unearned favor. You ever heard someone say, well, I'll be kind to them when they earn it. Right? I'll be nice to them when they earn it. No. Give them unearned, unmerited favor. And if you give that unearned, unmerited favor, that's going to help find resolution. Again, you're going to be using that calm voice. You're going to be thinking through your words. You're going to be acting in such a way as to reach a resolution. Verses 31 and 32. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving each other, just as God in Christ also has forgiven you. So even in marriage, especially in marriage, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you. Those things ought not to come into your conversation with your spouse. Don't hold grudges. Don't become bitter. Don't be wrathful and angry and clamorous. Clamorous would be making a lot of noise. Throwing your arms up and screaming and yelling and throwing stuff. Don't do that. Don't slander your spouse. Instead, be kind to one another. Be tenderhearted. Forgive one another. Why? Because God forgave you. And we ought to also forgive when we are hurt. All of this can be boiled down to what Jesus said in Matthew 7:12. Matthew 7:12, Jesus says, in everything, therefore, treat people the same way you want them to treat you, for this is the law and the prophets. What a great principle for addressing conflict with your spouse. How would I want them to treat me in this situation? Maybe you're the one who messed up, right? Maybe you stuck your foot in your mouth. Maybe you hurt their feelings. Maybe you lost your temper. Okay, well, how would I want them to treat me? Flip it around. Maybe they're the ones that lost their temper. Maybe they're the ones that stuck their foot in their mouth. Maybe they're the ones that hurt you. Well, if the roles were reversed, how would you want them to treat you? I can almost guarantee you, none of us would want a unreasonable tongue lashing. I don't know anybody who says, yeah, be mean to me. What would we want? We would want understanding, forgiveness, gentleness, kindness. Sounds like the fruit of the Spirit, doesn't it? Treat your spouse the way you would want to be treated, especially when there's a conflict, especially when you're in disagreement. Treat them the way you want them to treat you. Now, there's more we could talk about. The Bible is chock full of conflict resolution. But for today, as we've been talking about the joy of overcoming marital struggles, we've looked at the story of Song of Solomon, chapter 5 and 6, and we've learned some lessons from that section. We've also looked at some conflict resolution skills from elsewhere in the Bible. My friends, your marriage will have struggles. That's the truth of it. There will be struggles of various kinds. But how you handle those struggles will determine how strong you become. Do you let those struggles drive you apart and weaken you? Or do you use those struggles as opportunities to grow stronger together? My friends, here's the challenge for each of us. Learn and apply godly problem-solving skills in your marriage. They are skills. You do have to learn them, and you do have to practice them, and you're going to fail sometimes. You're going to know the right thing to do, and you're going to do the other thing, and you're going to have to ask for forgiveness. But learn and apply those godly problem-solving skills, and your marriage will benefit from it. Now today, as we're closing out our sermon, maybe your marriage is on the rocks. Maybe there's some difficulty, and you need the help of the elders to work through it. The elders are here for you. The rest of the congregation is here for you. Maybe there's some other situation in your life. Maybe there's something that you need to ask for forgiveness for or seek the prayers of the congregation. Maybe you're with us and you want to learn more about what it is to become a Christian. Whatever your needs are, we want to be here as a congregation. And we have two of our elders here. So if you have a need, please come up to one of the front rows as we're led in this invitation song.
Thank you for watching. For a deeper study of God's Word, contact us through our website in the description of this video. Lakes Region Church of Christ invites you and your family to Bible classes for all ages on Sunday morning, and join us for worship. We also offer other scheduled Bible classes. See you soon.